I'm all about blueprints, right? And I used to sit with a vision board or a notebook and just like throw every single piece of my vision onto that paper. Once upon a time, I didn't really seek God much, and there was a lot of chaos in that picture. And then one day, I realized that God literally has put down on paper the blueprint to being a phenomenal woman, to being a woman of wisdom. Wisdom is a woman. I don't know if we're ready for that conversation. This chapter of Proverbs comes up so often in my journey as a woman. And every time I read it, something new comes up for me. Now, I was brought to this chapter because I'm in this place where I am mapping out a blueprint for who it is I want to be as a woman, all of the things I want to accomplish. And I wanted to use the Bible as a blueprint because as a believer in Jesus, I know that the Bible is my blueprint for everything. Proverbs 31 being a blueprint, you see it everywhere. You see it everywhere. You see it on every Pinterest board. It is the blueprint and the staple of the woman that you are supposed to be. Proverbs 31:10, he who finds a wife finds... Hold on. Proverbs 31:10, we're going to do the CEV version. A truly good wife is the most precious treasure a man can find. Proverbs 31:10 in the King James Version, who can find a virtuous woman, for her price is far above rubies. So a virtuous woman, a wife, a wise woman, all of the things. So we start at verse 10. That whole Proverbs 31 woman starts at verse 10, but nobody really talks about the first 9 verses. I'm gonna read those to you real quick. So we're gonna go to Message. The words of King Lemuel, the strong advice his mother gave him. O son of mine, what can you be thinking of? Child whom I bore, the son I dedicated to God. Don't dissipate your virility on fortune hunting women, promiscuous women who shipwreck leaders. Leaders can't afford to make fools of themselves, gulping wine and swelling beer, lest hungover they don't know right from wrong, and the people who depend on them are hurt. Use wine and beer only as sedatives to kill the pain and dull the ache of the terminally ill, for whom life is a living death. Speak up for the people who have no voice, for the rights of all the down and outers. Speak out for justice. Stand up for the poor and the destitute. Listen, I don't want my concealer to dry, so we're gonna get that in there real quick. All 9 of those verses that most times we are not talking about. This is literally wisdom coming from wisdom, a wise woman, another virtuous woman, giving her son basically a blueprint and rules and regulations to how to choose wisdom, how to choose a wife. So with me adding this to my blueprint, I'm now realizing that this blueprint is not just for me as a woman, but it is for men. And I'll tell you why I got here. I had to go back and read this whole thing, Proverbs 31, because I've been having difficulty with making decisions. I personally made this blueprint. I started making this blueprint like 2 weeks ago, like 2 weeks before my birthday. And what is so crazy is that I've been having to make some really deep decisions. Like, do I respond to something someone said to me? Do I go this way in my business? Is today a rest day? What does God say about me? And how can I show up in the world like that? These are the things that I'm currently asking myself. In my blueprint, I have the scriptures. I have the scriptures, and then I have the characteristic, and then the action in which I need to do things. I had to ask myself if I was going to confront some confrontations that are in my life currently. I am the type of person that I shut down. When I feel all has been done, all has been said, there's nothing left to say or do, I will shut down. It doesn't matter if another person wants to talk it out. It doesn't matter if I feel like I have more to say, I shut it down. With me shutting down, we don't always get to a resolve. And quite frankly, if I can be really honest, my resolve is usually like, since I don't have to deal with this anymore, we just not going to deal with this no more. You know what I'm saying? But there is a scripture in chapter 31. There is a scripture that came up for me that showed me that I needed to stop running from confrontation. All right, so we got Proverbs 31:20. She opens her arms to the poor and extends her hands to the needy. She opens her arms to the poor and extends her hands to the needy. That's the NIV version. Let me tell you how this helped me make a decision on facing confrontation head on. Opening your arms to the poor and extends her hands to the needy doesn't just have to do with like who you help, like people who are poor financially, people who are poor in spirit, people who need your guidance, need your boldness, need you to show up. This is also you having compassion for others. With this running away from confrontation complex that I have, when I went to that scripture, and also when I talked about it in therapy, that's where we went to. That's the characteristic that we went to. That like, if you believe that you are called to these things, that you are made in the image of God, then why aren't you acting like it? Because God doesn't run from you in confrontation. Now, we're not saying to run towards things that are hurting you. I talk a lot about responsibility and having the responsibility of the things that you say and how you make people feel and all of that. And I say that because I have felt many times that people don't take enough responsibility for how they have made me feel. The responsibility has always gone to me that I'm a hyper emotional person, hypersensitive person, as opposed to taking the responsibility that maybe what you said was not helpful, it was hurtful. No matter what your intention was, this intention versus impact. So if my intention is love and the impact that I want to make on the world is love, then I have to have compassion for people. I cannot be leaving people on red. I cannot be leaving people just out there in the wilderness that I've called friends, family, or that I have respect for, or people that are looking for something from me. I may not have to give, and I don't have to run towards anything that is harming me, but I do have a moral obligation. She is noble, 31:10. She is virtuous. A virtuous and noble person stands up to what they believe in. They stand up in confrontation. They take on life head on. They don't run from it. So this Proverbs 31 woman is helping me figure out what and how I want to show up in the world. Who is it that I want to show up as? What do I need to do to show up as her? And how can I make one step in front of the other after another to become more like her, more like wisdom, to embody virtuosity, to embody wisdom, to embody love, to embody God's love. So in walking through these thoughts with myself, walking through these thoughts with my therapist, the conclusion has always been to pray for discernment, to pray for direction. And how do we know that we are hearing God's voice? Well, when I go to scripture and Proverbs 31:10 is describing a woman who is noble, I then have to ask myself, what does a noble woman do? What is the action that must take place? When Proverbs 31:8 highlights the characteristic of her being industrious, what actions will I take to be able to be an industrious woman? I want to spend more time with God so that I can hear His voice of innovation. Or Proverbs 31:24 highlights the characteristic of being confident in her business. How can I become more confident and move in what God has set out for me, not second guessing it? That means I need to be more in my word to know the characteristics of God and to know what He has laid out for me. The Proverbs 31 is not just a catchphrase, but it is literally the blueprint to wisdom, not only for women, but for men. It is the personification of wisdom. It is the blueprint to how to choose a wise woman. And it is the blueprint of choosing how to be a wise woman. Because at the end of the day, we can choose to be a fool or we can choose to be wise. And so I'm opening up my pages to Proverbs 31 on a daily to discern the decisions that I need to make for my life. Beautifully devoted, Tashana. 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 4 through 8. Love is patient. Love is Tashana. Tashana is love. Tashana is God's love. Tashana is patient. Tashana is kind. Tashana does not envy, is not boastful, is not arrogant, is not rude, is not self-seeking, is not irritable, and does not keep a record of wrongs. Tashana finds no joy in unrighteousness, but rejoices in the truth. It bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Tashana never ends, but as for prophecies, they will come to an end. As for tongues, they will cease. As for knowledge, it will come to an end. Love never ends.